in 1981, I moved to New York City. I was a young man in my 20s, and I was the first full-time non-alcoholic worker at the Bowery Mission down on the Bowery. And on Saturdays, in order to escape the Bowery, I would walk 100 blocks up to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I would it was like therapy. I would just go up and stand before a lot of the masterpieces there, and I would go into they have a couple of rooms, 2 or 3 rooms dedicated to Rembrandt van Rijn, famous Dutch artist of the Golden Age, and they painted in the 1600s. So you had Vermeer and Rembrandt and many other wonderful Dutch artists in that era. And so I would stand before one of his portraits, and it would just take my breath away. It was like, what is it about this? Looking at this portrait of a dead man, of some merchant that he painted, over 400 years ago, that takes your breath away, and it had to do with the way he would apply paint, and it was just the paintings were just so alive, even though the people were so dead. Well, Rembrandt painted a painting at age 36 in 1633, where it was a cathartic experience because his wife had died that year, and he had already lost 6 of 7 children in childbirth, and so he was reaching out throughout his painting and having a cathartic experience of his painting called Jesus Calms the Storm of Sea in the Sea of Galilee. And so when we look in Mark chapter 4, I believe it is, we see the story which we all know about, which Jesus is in the boat, and after a long hard day of preaching and walking, he's sound asleep in the bottom of the boat, and so the storm comes up, a gale comes up, and the boat is like they can't get the mast down soon enough, and the boat is about to go under, and it's a torrential rainfall, and they're going to sink, and they know they're done for. And so they're perplexed because Jesus is sound asleep. And they're going, who is this guy that he can sleep this well? I wish I could sleep that well, especially at my age. And so they wake him up, and Jesus yawns, and he stretches his arms out, and then he looks at the ocean, the sea, and he sees the storm, and he looks to the disciples and says, what's the matter with you guys? And they go, what do you mean? And he says, well, I'm with you. Why don't you just calm the storm? Because I'm with you. And they were perplexed. They didn't know what the heck he was talking about. So Jesus closes his eyes, and go, okay. And he goes over to the front of the boat, and he holds his arms out, stretched, as if he was on the cross. And he tells the ocean, the sea, to be still. And boom, the sea is still as can be, like glass. Amazing. Now the disciples are really in a state of shock. Who the heck is this guy? And so in this painting, you see that storm raging, and it's interesting because you see Rembrandt has painted himself as one of the disciples, and he's holding on to the mast. And no wonder, it's because he lost his wife, and he's lost so many children, and he's forlorn, and he needs the Christ, and he knows that. So in my painting, I produced the same scene, only it's different. It's quite different, and you are actually in the sea and you are about to drown, and there's a wave, like a final wave coming over your head, and then as you're about to go under, you see off in the distance this little boat and this little man with his arms outstretched, and you are about to, and you see that it is the Christ. And so he calms the storm. And I did this painting in terms of the scale so that, because our problems and our suffering and our deaths, they feel just like that you're in the water and you're in the storm and you're about to go under. And but the scale of this little figure way off in the corner of the painting with his arms outstretched symbolizes, though it may be small and we can understand how Jesus was God incarnate, he was, and he has his arms outstretched and he as if he's on the cross. So there, the miracle of the sea being calmed took place. This actually happened. Now, but what about those of us who do go under? What about those of us who have family members that do drown, that are washed away by floods, as happened in Texas, where 27 beautiful little girls were washed away, drowned, or along with the camp leader, or along with all these other wonderful Texans that drowned in the flood. And so Jesus still has his arms outstretched, because the crucifixion is all about Jesus understanding suffering and being the go-between between us and eternity. And so Jesus he still calms the storm. He calms the storm in our hearts and our minds for those of us who are left behind when we see a loved one has died tragically or washed away. And so when I painted this painting, often when I paint a painting, there's a message there for me, and God has given me a message, and I'm nothing but a conduit, a paperboy in terms of a painter. So it was 2 months after I painted the painting, I discovered that my wife and I discovered that she had cancer, and then I was also laid off a job, and so it was a very difficult storm, and but the Christ embraces us whether we're alive or whether we pass over.